all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Hi Weirdos, this is episode number 46 of the History for Weirdos podcast.
Welcome back, Weirdos. I'm feeling good.
I am not. If I sound a little funny, I'm just coming down with something. Nothing serious, but I think I sound a little groggy.
Yeah.
But I'm okay, just in case anyone was wondering what's up with my voice.
Like, why does her voice sound so weird?
Yeah, so I've just had kind of a lazy day today, just hanging out on the couch, watching way too much TV while Andrew's been out, like, surfing and being active.
Yeah. I know, I've been having, like, a great day. I met up with a buddy, went surfing, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And then Stephanie's at home like, I don't feel so good.
Yeah, I get up off the couch and I'm like, wow, you did it.
Whereas I'm, like, paddling in, getting my ass kicked at waves.
All I'll say is that I'm very grateful that this week is your week to regale us with a History for Weirdos tale.
Oh, yes.
So why don't you tell us what that is?
And that I shall. Okay, so today's topic is about a prophet who lived roughly 3,000 years ago. But even that is a slightly controversial statement. We'll get into that in a minute. And I will say, right off the bat, like, it probably is remotely or a little bit obvious once I say this, but like this was a very tough episode to research, just because so much is surrounded in myth and legend.
Okay.
And
those are always interesting, though.
And even like modern day archaeologists and historians and linguists even have trouble identifying when this person lived. But yeah, so just to give you a little bit of intrigue.
There's mystery.
This is a man who inspired a religion whose practitioners range from ancient Achaemenid Persian King of Kings to Freddie Mercury, the late singer of the rock band Queen.
Queen, King of Kings, and then Queen.
I should have.
That's so good.
I'm at a loss for words right now. I didn't even know that when I wrote that down. That was not a coincidence, no.
Wow, Freddie Mercury. So I have a feeling I know what this is.
Yes.
Because I watched the movie Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah. So you know all about Freddie.
So I know all about our boy.
So this episode will focus around the founder of Zoroastrianism, Zarathustra, or aka Zoroaster. I'll use these names interchangeably, but they're the same.
Okay, I don't think I can say it. Zoroastrianism?
Zoroastrianism.
Okay.
Founder is Zoroaster.
Okay.
And then...
Or
Zarathustra.
Okay.
Zarathustra, I will probably err more towards, just because that's a more proper pronunciation of his name. But, I mean, this is thousands of years ago, so it's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, Zoroaster comes from, like, the Greek, and they just, like, butchered it. So.
Of course they did.
I know, the Romans and the Greeks are so funny, because it's like, if you weren't, you know... Greek or Roman, basically, yeah. You were basically just, like, a straight-up barbarian. I mean, They did look to other older, like, really old civilizations like Egypt, and they definitely gave them some credence.
Oh,
but
they loved Egypt.
They were the exception. Everyone else basically were just barbarians.
Of course.
I mean, even the Greeks thought the Romans at one point were barbarians, so...
But were they wrong?
They did some barbarity, that's for sure. I love the Romans, so I'm a little bit like, yeah, they did some really messed up things, but they also built roads, and aqueducts.
Really nice roads.
Real nice roads, like. Okay, so I will... Okay, actually, before I even get into this, I just want to make a disclaimer. This episode is about the historical figure Zarathustra, and I'm going to purposely try to avoid dogma as much as possible. But, given that he is a religious teacher, philosopher, and just leader, that it's going to be impossible to stray from it like completely, right? But I will teach about his writings, but I'm not going to dive deep into like what they mean from like a theological perspective.
Yeah.
Just more of like, how did this influence history?
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to be very strict. Like, this is what he taught, and then stay away from that. Anything more than that.
Right. Because we don't know a lot about the religion itself.
Right. I don't know a single like person
who's a
Zoroastrian. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we've talked about this before, how much religion shapes history.
Exactly.
Different religions, different spiritual beliefs. It's so interesting. Like you said, aside from the actual, like, what did these people believe in? How did they practice? How did this impact their day to day? Like, the history of humankind is so shaped by these ideas.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
It is, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's so crazy when you look at, like, ancient civilizations. You can't really, like, look at political life, like, outside the scope of religion, because they're just so intertwined.
Yeah. It was just the default. Like, we all believe this. This is the lens in which we live our lives.
Right.
Which that is the case for some people today, but obviously now the goal is to separate those more.
Exactly.
It's not a successful goal that we always reach, but we're going for that.
Yeah. And with that, I think it's a good time to move on into the story again.
Yeah.
But, this obviously, we're looking at things from 3,000 years ago, so things will have changed with this religion, over the course of that history. Again, it's kind of going back to the disclaimer, but I did want to say this.
So you're basically saying this isn't like a reflection of what people might practice or believe today?
That's a perfect summary.
Okay.
That's a perfect summary.
Awesome.
So, Zarathustra was born in... Well, we don't know.
Yay!
Yeah. It's a hotly debated subject, with modern ranges being from like 1500 to 700 BC. If you throw in some ancient ranges, I mean, it goes back like literally millions of years, which is preposterous.
Yeah.
And even like, I think it was Aristotle, don't quote me on this, but it was Aristotle or one of those Greeks. They thought he lived like 3,000 years before them. So
wow.
Yeah, so the range is just all over the place. But the general consensus today, is roughly 1200 BC. Okay. And I think that's kind of a good reference point anyways, because that's also, and I think I'm just biased because it coincides with, what do I always talk about?
The Bronze Age collapse?
Yes. Yes, I'm not even joking.
Okay.
It roughly coincides with that.
It always goes back to the Bronze Age collapse in this household, you guys.
I know. And I don't think where he was from in modern Iran, it was that collapse was as hardly felt as it was in like the Eastern Mediterranean, but it was still happening. So Zarathustra starts off life training to be a priest. That's very, kind of all we know, and that comes from one of his writings, which I'll get to in a little bit. But according to tradition, he received a vision from Ahura Mazda, who is the main deity of Zoroastrianism, to spread, quote-unquote, the truth.
Okay.
And this was a look at dualism, or the contrast between what is holy and good versus what is evil and deceitful. Mm-hmm. It was just very, kind of black and white, for lack of a better term.
This tracks with prophets so
far. Right, I know, right?
This tends to be their vibe.
The evil was personified by the lie, or druj. And there was also evil spirits called devas. Uh-huh. I could get into that whole thing, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Because it's super interesting. But he's often mischaracterized as spreading an early representation of monotheism, but that's not strictly correct. According to many Achaemenid records throughout the 6th and 4th centuries BC, they often refer other gods as well. It's just that they held Ahura Mazda as the chief amongst them, as the creator of earth and heaven.
Okay. So he's like the source, and then there's these other deities that they do worship, but maybe not as much.
Exactly, not as much, and they're like, it's not like kind of in the Greek pantheon where you have Zeus, which is like the head honcho, and there's other gods, but they're all very strong, right?
Right.
This is like Ahura Mazda is by far he's the strongest. Then every other god is at least a tier down, if not more.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
Yeah. They're almost more like they're not quite demigods, but very lesser gods.
Okay.
His biggest contribution comes from the form of the Gathas. These are a collection of 17 sacred hymns that are written in a language called Avestan.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, because it's very... The only modern relative, I think, is ancient Sanskrit.
Wow. Ancient Sanskrit is the modern relative?
Or not but like the only other relative.
Wow.
Because they come from a linguistic group called the Indo-Aryan. Uh-huh. And so that split off into, modern Iran and then into the Indian subcontinent, modern day, Pakistan and India.
That's nuts to think about.
I know, isn't it?
Wow.
So what's fascinating about this is that this language, kind of like I mentioned, is very different to a lot of contemporary Proto-Iranian languages. And, and it's Vedic Sanskrit, to be specific.
From the Vedas? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the Vedas, exactly. And this is just further mystery to this already incredibly mysterious character.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I was like, how close is it related to Iranian? But sounds like not at all.
Not really, yeah.
Wow.
It's very strange. And they think that he comes from kind of like modern day Afghanistan, maybe. They called it Bactria in ancient times. And which was kind of very similarly linked to ancient Iran. But this language doesn't really match anything else in that area. It's so only similar to Vedic Sanskrit, which is way farther south.
Wow, that's so cool. How languages take on these lives and
right,
they're gone and the new ones are born. It's super interesting.
So it's crazy. The Gathas form the core of what's called the yasna, or essentially like the Zoroastrian principal form of worship. So his Gathas, what he penned, it's pretty big deal.
This sounds like a really big deal.
Yeah, he was a big deal. And so I kind of want to just give a brief overview on some of the events of his life.
Okay.
So again, I already mentioned this, but it's worth re-noting. Not a ton is known about his life. Mm-hmm. What we do know, he started training to be a priest of some sort of earlier Indo-Aryan or Indo-Iranian religion.
Okay.
Probably around the age of 7 years old, we think.
Wow.
He left his parents at age 20, according to him, and began traveling and learning. So he just wanted to travel. He's like a millennial.
So he might have been a Sagittarius, like me. He just wanted to travel. God. Sagittarius is also very spiritual zodiac sign. Like they come across as very like, oh, this dude just wants to like travel, have fun, but
be a prophet.
Be a prophet. No, the prophet would be like, it's considered actually, this is very interesting, a more mature and emotionally well-rounded and grounded Sagittarius will be very spiritual.
Ah,
and
very cool.
often become spiritual teachers.
Ah, okay.
So I'm going to guess that this dude's a Sagittarius like me. And I'm down.
Well, it's hard to tell because they didn't have the modern-day Gregorian calendar, nor did they...
But I'm calling it, so it's true.
But yeah, anyways.
Hashtag facts.
We don't even know the century he was born, let alone the year.
Let alone the zodiac sign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he left at age 20 to do his thing. And then it was around the age of 30 that he had that vision that I told you about of witnessing Ahura Mazda. Okay. Or actually it was technically one of his subordinates saying like, yo, this guy Ahura Mazda, he's the real deal. Everyone else, fake news, homie.
Wow.
That's kind of like my version of what transpired.
I think that sounds right.
That sounds about right, yeah. Also, he was 30. I'm 30. Coincidence? Absolutely.
Absolutely. But that means big things are coming.
Big things are coming. That's right. And it's podcast. Number one history podcast ever.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm absolutely certain. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. My weirdos. Okay, so at age 42, he received patronage from a queen... I'm going to butcher this. Hatuasa and a ruler named Visht-Aspa. And they were early adherents to Zoroastrianism.
Okay.
We know that he did convert Visht-Aspa. How he did it or, over what time period or whatever, I don't know. It was hard to find. And I don't think anyone knows.
I'm sure. So in these 12 years, so from 30, he has this big vision and...
Right.
It sounds like he starts writing his hymns. He got good traction in these 12 years.
Yeah.
He has the patronage of royalty behind
exactly.
him, so that's a big deal.
And these were definitely kind of these must have been some of the first royalty. So it's not super widespread at this moment yet.
Ooh, that's interesting.
But that will definitely change over the years. So again, this was probably in the region of Bactria or modern-day Afghanistan. He taught about individual judgment, heaven and hell, the resurrection of the body, the last judgment, and everlasting life for the reunited soul and body. Now, does that sound familiar?
I went to Catholic school, and that sounds very familiar. That's so interesting.
Yes. It's probably not a coincidence.
No,
Definitely
I doubt
not
it.
a coincidence. So he died, and I'll get to that in later on in the episode, but he died at the age of 77, so quite a long life.
Yeah.
Especially during that time frame, like,
Oh my gosh.
like during the Bronze Age collapse or early Iron Age, like that is incredible.
He would have been like quite a community elder at 77.
I know. And so what's nuts to think about that is what is that, 47 years that he was teaching Zoroastrianism.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Almost half a century.
Exactly. Now, even though we know very little about the details of his life, I still want to talk about him because he was just so influential on events and like he was so influential on the way things were transpire for the next like 3,000 plus years.
Oh my God.
I mean, not only that, but like a lot of his teachings probably translate really well into modern ideas. So we're going to fast forward a bit to the Achaemenid Persian Empire around the year 500 BC under the King of Kings, Darius the Great, or Darius the Great.
I don't know what we were watching once. Everyone went.
Oh, it was Alexander.
It was Alexander, and they call Darius Darius, and
Yeah.
I fucking love it.
I know ever since that, I'm like,
That's such a dope name.
yeah, like Darius. Like, and it's, by the way, it's spelled like the same as our modern Darius, like
Yeah,
Darius Rucker.
Which is still a cool name, but Darius just sounds a little more badass, a little more edgy.
Or the Romans would have called him Darius.
Okay.
Or Darius. In
I like
modern,
that
English.
too.
Yeah.
I want to get a cat, in case anyone was wondering, even though I'm like severely allergic to cats. And one of our cats, I want two,
Yeah.
to be honest. One of our cats is Pericles.
Yeah.
And the other one's going to be Darius.
Okay. That's kind of, that works.
Yeah, I think
Because you
they're
had
good.
Greek, Persian. It's awesome.
Yeah.
We should get a Persian cat. For,
Oh my God, and they're
and
so
call them
cute.
Darius.
Perfect. You heard it here first.
And then there's like 1 million kitties in Greece, so maybe we can adopt one or something.
Okay, I'm down.
This is a bad idea.
This is a very bad idea. I won't be able to breathe, but it'll be worth it.
It'll be worth it for
Yeah.
sure. We'll get you shots. But anyways, so I picked, by the way, I picked the specific point in 500 BC because this is a high watermark of the Achaemenid Empire. But basically, the Persian nobility believed that without question, that Ahura Mazda was practically the one true God, or just was the one true God, and generally followed the teaching of Zarathustra. So, but despite that, they were incredibly religiously tolerant for the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like, I mean, think about it. Like, even think about like early Christianity, or not early Christianity, but like middle-aged.
Oh, middle-aged Christianity is not super tolerant.
No, not super tolerant, right? But they were, and it's basically like as long as you submitted to Persian political authority, which, to be honest, was probably more important to them, subject peoples could literally just worship whatever deities they wanted. Like, they were notoriously very lenient on the Greeks with their pantheon.
That's really interesting because, again, folks, like, this is not picking on any religious groups or anything like that. Just like from a human perspective, that's not common.
No.
We tend to, whatever types of beliefs, even when they're not religious, but especially religious, we tend to really adhere to and identify with those. And we're like, this is the right way.
Right.
Everyone else needs to do this and think this way. So for their time, that's incredibly tolerant.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they prioritized essentially just their political power.
Right.
Much more, which is smarter.
I mean, yeah.
It's easier to get things done that way.
And what's interesting is, I think it's at Persepolis. They have like beautiful artwork where it shows like the people of the world like kind of singing Kumbaya. Of course, like they would brutally like subjugate people like if they got out of line, but like it was a nice notion. Whereas like, and I wrote here in my notes,
God.
like the Neo-Assyrians were like the exact opposite. I find the Neo-Assyrians incredibly fascinating, but like, and I want to just compare like the last great Mesopotamian empire was the Neo-Assyrians, and they also believed their god, the god of Ashur, was the one true God. There was very few exceptions to that.
Yeah, that exactly illustrates what we're talking
And
about.
if you didn't fall into line with their religion, you're toast. To put it very nicely.
Oh my gosh, I bet.
Yeah. So.
But this Persian Empire, under the teachings of
Zarathustra,
thank you, did at least idealize, even if they didn't act on it, this idea of like a united people living peacefully side by side.
Right, exactly.
That's lovely.
Like they recognized that people had differences, and like, but they, as long as they submitted to the King of Kings, like they, you could worship whatever you want. They even like let people, like have democracies. Like some Greek cities, like have democracies under them. They're just like, you just need to like submit to us.
That King of Kings was smart.
He was very smart. Well, I mean, that's why he's called Darius or Darius the Great. So I mean, that goes with that.
That's
that goes
why
for
I'm
a
naming
reason.
my cat after him.
Yeah,
one of my cats.
Exactly. And again, like I don't want to say like the Persian Empire was also like just all kumbaya and everything. Like they committed atrocities, but I mean, again, what empire didn't? Just like relatively, it was pretty mild compared to what happened before.
Right. That's a good reminder.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think they were the only empire to ever subjugate the Jewish folks, and they never rebelled.
The Jewish people did not rebel.
Never.
Interesting.
Because it was Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, that when he freed the Jewish people in Babylon and was like, you can go back to Israel or you can stay here, it's up to you. Whereas like a generation before, Nebuchadnezzar II of the Babylonian Empire did some really mean things to the Jewish folks. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. And again, the religious tolerance, I'm sure, made it so that that people didn't rebel.
Exactly. In fact, I think even modern, like, and again, I'm not Jewish, so I don't know for certain, but I've heard too many people mention this to disregard it. But like, apparently Cyrus the Great, again, the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, is pretty well regarded even today amongst like Jewish scripture and the religion.
I bet, because what a different form of treatment.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that would have really stood out.
Yeah. So, and again, so they obviously let this, the Semitic peoples in the Levant kind of do their thing too. So, and again, I kind of bring all this up because I have to think that this form of diplomacy was in part due to Zarathustra and his teachings.
Yeah, if not directly.
I mean, even during his life, like he was threatened quite often, but he truly believed that Ahura Mazda was the one true God, and he never forced people to bend to his will. He just taught. And it says, like, you should be a follower because this is the right way. Again, simplifying it to, like, extreme, but that's generally what happened.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and of course, his legacy would be worshipped throughout the different empires that would control Iran. So from the Achaemenids through the conquest of Alexander.
Wow.
And then through the entirety, and so during the Alexandrian time, it was called... Seleucus the First was his general who kind of created what's called the Seleucid Empire.
Yeah.
And this worship continued during him. But then when the next two Persian empires, or like, Iranian empires came to be, they also taught the worship of, Zoroastrianism.
Oh my God, there's so many changes.
So many changes. All the way to the fall of Sassanid Empire, to the Arab invasion in the middle of the 7th century AD.
That is actually nuts.
Yeah, I think it's 651 if I remember the year correctly. But just think middle of like 650s-ish.
So how many years is that from when he started his teachings, you think?
Oh, started his teachings?
Yeah.
I mean, if we use 1200-ish,
yeah.
That's like 1800 years.
That's nuts.
Yeah, like almost 1900.
From just one dude.
From one guy, yeah.
Who was like, I'm going to write some really cool stuff and talk about, wow.
I mean, yeah, like as this kind of the official religion of like some of the biggest empires like in the world at the time throughout centuries. So kind of a big deal, right? And it's just crazy because like this religion still exists to this day.
Yeah.
Like Freddie
Back
Mercury.
to Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury, baby.
Watch Bohemian Rhapsody
Exactly.
if you haven't.
And, there's the kind of obvious implications too that it ironically kind of not spawned, that's the wrong word, but sparked the creation of, Christianity, or helped influence the Christianity.
Yeah, a lot of the ideas and the teachings.
and later Islam as well.
Yeah.
Possibly even like helped influence Jewish beliefs before that.
So it impacted the Abrahamic religions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of borrowed teachings in all the Abrahamic religions.
That's so crazy. Also, if I remember correctly, Freddie Mercury, to get back to him, his family was originally from Zanzibar, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the religion also migrated.
It did, yeah. And now it's, ironically, like the biggest empire in the world had ever seen at a certain point in time. That was like the state religion, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like a very,
it's a more minor one.
More minor.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, I don't think, to my knowledge, I haven't met someone who's a practitioner or even sort of like would ethnically identify with this belief system, but I had heard of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really interesting.
I know. Isn't that cool? So, and that's it. That's the life and legacy, really, of Zarathustra or Zoroaster.
Right. And to your point earlier, sorry I interrupted because I was thinking about Zanzibar. Even indirectly, outside of Zoroastrianism, his teachings, like you said, influence the major world religions today.
Today.
So modern concepts of right and wrong and things like that, the archetypes that we have of like heaven and hell, a lot sounds like are maybe not 100% come from this guy,
right?
But are really related to what he taught.
He, at the very least, he influenced these things.
Yeah.
At the very least, right?
Yeah.
And so again, over 3,000 years ago, possibly longer, possibly a little bit shorter. We don't know.
And this is someone, prior to you sharing this story with us today, I had heard nothing about.
Yeah, and he's like, the world we live in, like,
is shaped by him.
Yeah. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. That's what I love about being able to do this podcast with you is hearing about those folks that maybe, at least for us, being taught in the U.S., we were both taught in California specifically, didn't hear about these things.
Right.
Things you didn't learn in school, but are still so important to know about.
I know, right? Mm-hmm. I love it. I love this podcast, too, for that reason.
Subscribe, share, rate, review.
But seriously, do that.
But seriously, please.
Yeah.
So what are your sources, my love?
So my sources, thank you. I know I haven't forgotten quite a while. But my sources are Encyclopedia Britannica, worldhistory.org, history.com, the New World Encyclopedia, and of course our favorite, Wikipedia.
Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And before, I should have said this at the beginning of the episode, but if you normally just fast forward this part and go to the next episode or whatnot, please don't. Because our 50th anniversary.
Our 50th anniversary.
I know. 50th anniversary is in a few decades. No. Our 50th episode is coming up, and we've gotten a lot of good questions for our Ask Us Anything, AUA.
Yeah.
But we still have room for more, I think. So keep on asking questions that you think that you want the answers to, right? And it can be about podcasting, this podcast, our love of history, why we got together.
Yeah.
Our dog, Stella, what we think about, like, the Kardashev scale. Literally anything you want.
Anything. What our favorite colors are.
Yeah. Mine's
Very
blue.
similar questions.
So don't ask that.
There's a spoiler.
Yeah, that's a spoiler for you guys.
Oh my God. That's unprofessional podcaster.
Unprofessional. Well, I think that's all I have for you folks today. And until next time.
Thank you so much, weirdos. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, Christmas. And what better way to get into the holiday spirit than with a Minky Couture blanket? Whether you're gathered around the tree with loved ones, roasting marshmallows by the fire, or just looking for a cozy way to stay warm on a chilly night, Minky blankets are the perfect addition to your Christmas festivities. With a wide range of festive designs and colors, you can find the perfect blanket to match your holiday decor or gift to your loved ones. So this Christmas, make your holiday even cozier with a Minky Couture blanket. Head to minkycouture.com now and find your perfect blanket, just in time for the holiday. Happy holidays from Minky Couture.